Hello everyone, today we are talking about the Sorcerer. We have lots of new things to talk about. We've got a new table, we've got some very big improvements for subclasses. Let's dive in.
The Sorcerer has had a number of exciting transformations. This is the class for the person who was either born with the magic or an event happened and transformed them. This is the closest in some ways we get in D&D to having a class that's almost like a superhero, a person who just has innate powers. We wanted to enhance that theme in a variety of ways, and you can see that right away at first level in the class with a brand new feature called Innate Sorcery. Innate Sorcery allows the Sorcerer to spend a bonus action, basically burst with their innate magic, and while this phenomenon goes on, the spell save DC of their sorcerer spells increases by 1, and they have advantage on any attack roll they make as a part of a sorcerer spell. When designing it, we thought of it essentially as the sorcerer's rage. It has a very different role in the class from rage, but it is a similar kind of thing of just suddenly, like, rah!
You're powering up.
I'm powering up. And we wanted to give people this feature right away because this feature shows, especially when you put the new warlock next to the new sorcerer, next to the new wizard, it's very clear looking at even just their first level how distinct each of the 3 arcane spellcasters are from each other. Now, the spellcasting feature of the sorcerer has also been improved. As we've done in our other dedicated spellcasters who have cantrips, we've made it so that you can change one of your cantrips whenever you level up. Again, cantrips used to be like a perma choice. You chose it and that was that for the rest of your career. When you get to 2nd level, you get Font of Magic and Meta Magic at that same level now. For those of you who are not familiar with the Sorcerer, Font of Magic is the feature that gives you your sorcery points. These are points that you use to unlock various magical effects, and that can include turning some of those points into spell slots. It can include taking spell slots and turning them into sorcery points. But one of the main ways that you use your sorcery points is on meta magic. And meta magic is a signature feature for sorcerers, just as Eldritch Invocations are a signature for warlocks. Meta magic options allow the sorcerer to modify spells as the sorcerer casts them. And we have revisited every one of the meta magic options, fine-tuned them, shared a lot of that retuning with folks through Unearthed Arcana, got feedback, and now we have the final slate here for sorcerers to use, along with a couple of new options that appeared originally in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. And so that all means that now sorcerers have an even better meta magic kit than they did before, that they can also combine with their innate sorcery burst, which gets better than at higher levels. At 5th level, you get Sorceress Restoration, which now lets you get sorcery points back a bit easier than you could before. Then at level 7, you have a new feature called Sorcery Incarnate, which allows you to spend sorcery points to get uses of innate sorcery back. So if you've run out of your power-up ability, well, now you can use sorcery points to get it back. We've also now made it so that starting at level 7, while your innate sorcery is active, you can now use 2 of your meta magic options on each spell instead of the normal 1, because typically when a sorcerer casts a spell, they can only use 1 meta magic option at a time on that spell. Although there are a few exceptions. There's some specific meta magic options that can piggyback on other meta magic options. But again, at level 7 now, all sorcerers gain the ability that while they're powered up with their innate sorcery, to double up on meta magic options. Then at level 20, they get what is probably my favorite new name for a feature in the new player's handbook. They get Arcane Apotheosis. And simply because apotheosis is such a delicious word to say.
Yeah.
And what this now lets you do is when your innate sorcery feature is active, on each of your turns, you can use a meta magic option without spending sorcery points at all. And so what this means is, in addition to its base improvements for you, innate sorcery over time will just turn you as a sorcerer into a meta magic machine because you will just start being able to modify your spells in more ways and doing it for free, which then also has the carry-on effect of allowing you to stretch out your sorcery points more. So in addition to us giving you more ways to get your sorcery points back, we've also made it so that by the time you reach level 20, you're essentially getting sorceress coupons all over the place so that you're able to do more and more things without spending as many points as you would have had to in the past.
Perfect.
So all of this together means that the sorcerer class itself, which already was all about sort of customization on the fly, given how sorcerers use meta magic, you now have that in spades. Also, just as an aside, a sort of meta commentary, if people want to think about how the sorcerer and the warlock in particular relate to each other, or rather contrast with each other, we think in many ways of the warlock as the arcane spellcaster, where you have a ton of customization choices at character creation and as you level up. I mean, it is supremely customizable. The sorcerer, in contrast, is about customization in the moment.
Right.
So while it does not have the same amount of build versatility as the warlock, it has a tremendous amount of tactical versatility. And then their companion in the arcane triad, the wizard, is all about just being the most versatile with the most number of spells.
Yeah.
And so the three of them together then fill really distinct niches together as the arcane trio. Shall we dive into the subclasses?
Yeah, let's dive in. First off, we've got Aberrant Sorcery. This is the tentacles and goo cosmic horror. One of my favorites from Tasha's by far. Tell me what has improved here.
So Aberrant Sorcery and Clockwork Sorcery both migrated in from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. And they were so beloved in that book and so solid that they have made the migration intact. So each of them are going to feel very familiar and cozy for anyone who has played them before. Now, in the process, we have made a few tweaks, but mostly they're clarification tweaks, and mostly about making sure that these two subclasses integrate in with the new player's handbook as seamlessly as possible. And so people will see there are some wording changes, some details, but the core functionality that you love, whether it's your gooey aberrant sorcerer or your order-powered clockwork sorcerer, the things you love are still there. Because again, these two subclasses were so solid and also really are a nice thematic contrast to the Draconic Sorcerer and the Wild Magic Sorcerer. Those were the two that were in the 2014 Player's Handbook. And these two, like so many of the other subclasses that we've added to the Player's Handbook roster, help fill out a quartet. You can think of the Aberrant Sorcerer as being a companion to the Draconic Sorcerer in that in the Player's Handbook, these are the two sorcerers who are associated with types of monsters.
Yeah.
They are, in some ways, you can almost think of them as the monstrous sorcerers.
Right.
And one of them, and it's interesting, they both have to do with creatures that often have scales.
Yeah.
But again, with the Draconic Sorcerer, it's associated with, the most iconic creatures in our game, dragons, who have a mystical connection with the material plane, in contrast to Aberrant Sorcery, which is connected to the tentacle and star and horror-filled far realm, which is basically as far away from the material plane as you can get.
Yeah.
And so these two, the Aberrant Sorcerer and the Draconic Sorcerer, in a way represent two extremes on the monstrous sorcery axis. This is in contrast to the Clockwork Sorcerer and the Wild Magic Sorcerer, who are really about order and chaos. With the Clockwork Sorcerer being all about tapping into the magic of planes like Mechanus to impose order through their innate magic on reality.
Yeah, I love how each of these have such distinct personality. Because again, not only butted up against Wild Magic Sorcery, but also really Aberrant Sorcery too, because you have these things that could be amorphous and blobbish and scales and unknowable, and this is imposed order and everything must be known. So it's just a nice through line with all of them.
I love that these four now coexist together in the player's handbook. And then the two new subclasses are then accompanied by the returning subclasses, Draconic Sorcery and Wild Magic Sorcery, that have some significant new elements in them.
Well, let's get into the Draconic Sorcerer, which was always a beloved one.
Oh yeah, so the Draconic Sorcerer is in many ways the iconic sorcerer subclass, particularly because dragons have been a part of the backstory of the sorcerer class, going back to the class's introduction in 3rd edition. And so it was always important to us that in 5th edition, we retain that draconic element and to honor the class's origin back in 3rd edition. And so what we've done here is we have really amped up the draconic angle of this subclass. So first off, you're going to see that we have sort of remixed several of the elements so that you still have what you'd expect, like your increased resilience. You still have more hit points than the typical sorcerer. You also have, without wearing any armor, a higher armor class than the typical sorcerer. But now that's joined at 3rd level by a list of spells, which you did not have before.
Yeah, which did not exist before.
No, this is a brand new feature called Draconic Spells. And here, we were able to give you magic that will assist you in leaning fully into your dragon magic fantasy. And here we were able to really make use of the expanded spell chapter in this book. Here's some examples. We now are able to give you, right at 3rd level, the spell Dragon's Breath, because Dragon's Breath is one of the spells that has been added to the player's handbook. We also, I'm particularly excited about this, when you reach 9th level as a sorcerer and you have this subclass, you can now summon a dragon, which was not an option for the sorcerer in 2014, but because the brand new spell Summon Dragon is in the player's handbook, you can do what it says on the tin and now have a certain number of times per day a dragon buddy who's fighting alongside you.
That's amazing.
The Summon Dragon spell is a sort of new version of a summoning spell that we had in Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, and this one has been retooled to be appropriate for the core game. Now, we couldn't resist, so we kept going in enhancing this subclass. You still have the resistances also that were associated with the subclass, but now they don't cost sorcery points.
Yeah.
And so this will allow you to enjoy this benefit without having it be a drain on your sorcery point pool. We've also increased the speed of your dragon wings. Now, you're not going to be able to have them on all the time, but when you do have them on, you're going to be even faster than you were in 2014. Finally, at level 18, you have a brand new feature called Dragon Companion. Now, you already at level 9 started always having the Summon Dragon spell prepared. Well, when you reach level 18, building on that, you can now cast that spell without requiring its costly material component. And you can also cast it without a spell slot once per day. And you also have the option of, when you cast it in this way, of not having to concentrate on it. You can have your dragon buddy out and be concentrating on another spell when you reach level 18. And so that means now, in addition to embodying draconic power yourself, you can have this dragon companion who is a literal dragon at your side. All of this together, to me, means we have the most draconic sorcerer that we've ever had.
So I have been in love with wild magic sorcery since I was a kid. I remember seeing it in 2nd edition in the Tome of Magic, and it just scratched an itch. It was the concept of pure chaos magic. And there is so much new in this subclass. Such dramatic improvements have been made.
So right away, the thing that people will see, and you got to see a preview of this in Unearthed Arcana, is we have removed the element in this subclass that essentially required you to get DM permission to have your wild magic happen. Now you just get to use your class feature. Now, there's still a unpredictable side to it, which is a core part of this subclass's identity. But at least you now know that if the die rolls are kind to you, or unkind, depending on what you end up rolling, you know wild magic is going to happen, and you're always just waiting to find out when. So it now really is, it's just a question of when now, not if.
Yeah, because you can force its hand eventually.
Yes, which you could also do in 2014, but you have a bit more flexibility here, particularly because you can more easily get Tides of Chaos back than you could before.
Yeah.
And all of this means that you will be able to dip into this pool of chaos more reliably. So much so that when you get to level 18, we have a brand new feature for this subclass where you can, once per day, automatically trigger a wild magic surge.
Yeah.
And you get to choose what happens.
Yeah.
And that's why this new feature is called Tamed Surge, that by level 18, you have figured out how to tap into your wild magic so effectively that you can look at the wild magic surge table and just, I'll have that happen. Now, there are a couple of limits here. One is you cannot choose the final row in that table, because that final row has some really juicy options that you only gain access to if the dice give you access to them. We've also made it so that if you choose a row in the table that itself has a die roll in it, you have to still make the die roll within that row. Now, where the majority, though, of the new material in this subclass exists is not actually in the features we've talked about.
Yes.
It's in the table.
It's amazing.
So I'm glad you think so.
Complete game changer for wild magic sorcery.
In Unearthed Arcana, people got to see the new features for this subclass.
Yeah.
And there's great feedback, a lot of excitement about the new features. But in UA, people were still using the Wild Magic Surge table from 2014. And my goodness, is everyone in for a treat, because
it's amazing.
because the table has been redesigned from top to bottom.
Yeah.
And it still involves rolling percentile dice.
Yeah, it's still chaos.
Oh, in some ways it's even more chaotic than it was before.
Because you have more rolls that can happen within this roll.
Yes.
Things can really pop off.
Because we perhaps, feeling a game design Wild Magic Surge, we decided to introduce even more chaos into the table.
Yeah.
Because, yes, as you say, you could roll something that then causes you to roll something. and so there is almost this, it's like you're watching, like, okay, where's it going to end up? And we've packaged some of the options. So like all of the options that summon things are now together, and doing that now made room for us to introduce some brand new options. So you're not only going to see the options that were there remixed and moved around the table, there are brand new options here. Some are more powerful than options that were there before. Others lean into the whimsical side of the table. They're one of the options where if you get one of the rows and then you roll the die, you could even end up with a case that all of those options that transform the sorcerer could all hit the sorcerer at once.
Yeah.
And so there are just so many fun options here with so many different random possibilities because of the nested die rolls, that Wild Magic Sorcerers are going to be the wildest they've ever been.
Previous Wild Surge tables have been a wee bit punishing. And certainly we still have, like, turning into a pod plan for a turn. That's still there. Being vulnerable to piercing damage. So things can go bad, but there's a lot more good, too.
Yes.
And so you channeling this Wild Magic Surge can cause something amazing and completely change an encounter. Maybe for the bad, but also for the good, and it does feel way more wild.
And one of our goals here was, to still have, there's that chance of something unwelcome happening.
You're setting everything on fire,
Right. But we wanted to shift the balance of the table a bit, so it was a little less about, is something good or bad going to happen, and more about, there's a small chance something bad will happen, but most likely something cool will happen.
Yeah.
And then what the uncertainty is, okay, whatever cool is going to happen, how is that now going to affect all of our tactical choices? So we wanted it to be much more about the fun of it, the unexpected of it, and lessen a little bit the dread of it, but there is still dangerous possibility, because it is still a core part of the Wild Magic identity that this could go very wrong.
And these potentials are basically, for all intents and purposes, it's extended spell list, because all the other sorcerers get one, but this is a lot of different options for different spell-like effects that might occur depending on how you roll.
Yes. We've even had internal folks who look at the 4 subclasses and they were wondering, oh, did you forget the Wild Magic Sorcerer's spell list? Because the other 3 subclasses have a spell list.
They are the spell list.
And like, oh no, we did not forget. It's this D100 table, which has many other spells nested inside it.
Yeah.
So yes, anyone watching this video, if you're looking for the Wild Magic Sorcerer's spell list, take a look at that table and you have found it.
There's another ability halfway in there that existed before where you can make 2 rolls on the Wild Magic Surge table and choose which one you would prefer. So you have that progression of slowly getting a little bit more of the reins on chaos magic.
More reins on what is even more chaotic than it was before. And we did this not only for thematic reasons and for fun, but also because we made the change in the the subclass itself, that the sorcerer is going to be interacting with this table more often.
Yeah, yeah.
And because you're going to be interacting with this table more often, it was important to us that there be more possibilities.
Yeah.
Because we did not want you to sort of run through it too quickly.
Yeah.
And so that's one reason why, as you found when you first looked through it for the first time, oh my goodness, is there a lot here?
Well, I finally get to use the big 100-sided die of mine. Thank you so much. I'm so excited for this sorcerer and all the subclasses.
Thank you.
When you pre-order the digital physical bundle, you also get an exclusive digital gold dragon mini for our 3D virtual tabletop, the Dragons of D&D digital art book, 15 dice sets, 34 frames, and 15 backdrops. And if you pre-order the digital 2024 Player's Handbook on D&D Beyond, you get exclusive bonuses, 12 sets of digital dice representing each class, 10 new frames, and 5 new backdrops. And all of those Player's Handbook bonuses are available right now on D&D Beyond. You can find the links to all of that in this video description.
Thank you so much for watching. We have a ton of video content coming out about the new Player's Handbook and all the new core rulebooks, the new monster manual, the new Dungeon Master's Guide. So be sure to check out all of that content. And thank you for watching.